Hello, this is Father Matthew Schneider on the Autistic Priest YouTube channel, and I just want to talk today about how to deal with sensory issues in Mass. One of the things that a lot of us with autism struggle with is a variation in sensitivity. A lot of times it's hypersensitivity, where small things will set us off that would be nothing for somebody else. And one of the things where that can happen is at Mass. We have, all the smells and smells. We have the incense, we have the singing, we have the preaching, which can get like very, very dramatic. We have the bells, we have all these different things. And we have a loud sound system and all these different things, which can really set us off. And what can we do? And I want to present kind of 3 points here. The first point is going to be, masses that are more helpful. The second point is strategies, and the third point is exemptions. The first point is the masses that are more helpful. And I think it's very important to look for masses that are more sensory friendly. Some dioceses might have specifically sensory friendly masses. Sometimes the masses for disabled or special needs children will be sensory friendly. It just varies a little bit in that regard. And those are nice. The second thing that you can often find is oftentimes if there's a parish that has a very early Sunday morning Mass, like 8 a.m. or something like that, or 7 something, those Masses tend to be no songs, relatively quick, much more kind of logical, methodical preaching, not fire and brimstone screaming preaching, and much less tendency to sensory overload. The third thing I would say is certain other variations of the Roman Rite are worth looking into. If you have a Latin Mass parish in your diocese, there are 2 forms of Latin Mass. There's a High Mass and a Low Mass. The High Mass will tend to have a lot of smells and bells, and if the singing, a lot of incense, things like that, which probably is about as bad as an ordinary parish, might even be worse for a lot of people. But the Low Mass will be very simple and low on sounds, low on incense, and in a way it's very nice for us because then we can go to Mass and not be overloaded with our senses. If you are going to do that regularly, I would recommend getting a little bit on understanding the Mass. Make sure you understand it, because sometimes the Latin Mass, it requires a little bit of background understanding. Certain ones of the Anglican Ordinariate may be a little less sensory intensive. Certain parishes may be less sensory intensive, just on different things like how they're made, so what kind of smells they have, because sometimes the specific smells of the parish can set certain autistics off. So those are kind of things with looking for a parish or for a Mass. Now the second thing is to manage it, and I would say, first of all, don't try and be Superman. Don't show up, running into Mass, and then, after something where you're almost at sensory overload before you get there, and then just like Mass comes and it's like, boom, you get to overload. Because all of us, at least most of us, it's not kind of like, we don't go from like perfectly calm to sensory overload in 30 seconds most of the time. It's usually a progression of sensory aggravations. And so if you give yourself time, prepare, calm yourself down before Mass and things, that helps. Another thing that helps is don't be afraid to use what you need to use. I do it as discreetly as possible. It's not to make a scene, because then people start asking things. But if you stick in, foam earplugs that are rated for a certain amount of decibels, you can still hear what's going on. No problem. Most people aren't going to pay much attention to it. If you take out your stim toy and kind of use it just on your lap, not swing it around like this, because then it kind of distracts others. But don't feel afraid to do that. I mean, we're all called to go to Mass, and we're all called to bring ourselves as we are. And we as autistics are as we are, and we have sensory needs that sometimes are difficult to satisfy. Now finally, and this is an important thing, is that the obligation to go to Mass as Catholics is to make a sincere attempt to go to Mass to the best of our abilities. So if you do these things, you're actually prepared, and then some Sunday, I don't know, something happens with this music or the smells or whatever, and you're set off and you have a meltdown, don't be afraid to leave the church. If you can come back for communion, good. If not, if you just have to like go home and lie in your bed for 2 hours, do that. Take care of yourself. Don't worry about having a meltdown or a shutdown in the middle of the church if that's going to happen. And when that happens, you're no longer obliged for Mass on Sunday if it's a true shutdown that you try to avoid. It's just like if I have I as a priest I can say Mass on my own privately in the house, but if you have the flu, you're not obliged to go to Mass because sometimes you can barely make it to the kitchen to make yourself some chicken soup or something, and you're not obliged to do what's impossible. If for some reason something sets you off and you're just having a really tough day, same thing. Usually for most of us we can manage, a lot of us can manage it for those things, but I know if somebody throws me 3 or 4 monkey wrenches to my schedule the day before, the next day it's like the littlest thing will set me off because it's so hard for me to adjust for all those schedule changes. So hopefully that helped in finding a Mass that is more sensory friendly, dealing with sensory overload issues well at Mass, and realizing that God isn't calling us to do what's impossible with regard to other things with sensory issues. So if we have a meltdown, shutdown, if some Sunday we're just absolutely totally overwhelmed, the obligation is to make a sincere effort to try to get to Mass, to put our effort in. It's not necessarily to actually make it if it is impossible. So hopefully that helps. God bless you. If you're interested in more about autism and spirituality, autism and Catholicism, make sure you like this video, subscribe, comment, suggest other things for new videos. Hopefully I will be sending in my proposal for a book of prayers for autistics, and hopefully we can get that published in the next year or so. God bless.